been in the real estate game for the last 6 years or so. We buy
Nice.
multifamily real estate around Chicago. I got into the game while I was still practicing law as a corporate bankruptcy attorney,
Hmm.
which is as exciting as I'm making it sound right now. So I was more than happy to pivot away from that when I had the opportunity to buy our first little building in Chicago, and that was a little piece of crap that we were able to pick up,
Yeah.
with a couple friends, and
Nice.
in about 2013, and we leveraged that and parlayed it into a slightly less crappy building, and have gone on from there, and now we've made a career out of it. So
Wow, dude, that's awesome. I
yeah,
know you're kind of being what's the word? You're not being bashful. You're not overly selling it, but like so many people want to do that. They want to
yeah,
quit the rat race and figure out something cool. And you
yeah.
and you guys did that, and that's an amazing accomplishment that you're still doing it 6 years later, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way that it's turned out. We could always want a little bit more, or expand the empire, or feel like we're, on more solid ground. That can always be the case. But the fact that I can sleep at night knowing I've got income coming in, and nobody's writing my checks, and nobody's demanding I go sit in an office for X amount of hours on a daily basis it's a pretty liberating thing. I couldn't
Hmm.
even fathom going back to the old way at this point. It's funny
Right?
how, yeah, I don't even know how I would function in an office setting.
Yeah.
I'd probably be even worse than I was the first time around. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's scary at first, but I'm pretty thrilled to feel like we've really made it. Cut the cord,
Hmm.
broken the chains.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Escaped your chains.
exactly,
Yeah, and
exactly.
that's funny you say that. Like pretty much every new-ish or seasoned entrepreneur I talk to, like their fear goes from not making enough money to having to go back and to their old job.
Yeah, yeah. I have other contingency plans before
Oh
before
yeah.
going back to an
Oh
office.
yeah. There's you don't even want to know the
there's
depravity.
there's a high bridge in one of them. There's a Hamburglar style mask in another one of them. There's
Hmm.
all
Oh,
sorts of
nice. Nice.
all sorts of other options before I go back and get a real
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
It's
Wow.
not for everybody. I mean, there's definitely people that I talk to. I was back with some friends from my firm relatively recently, and they still enjoy what they're doing, and they like the way that
Hmm.
they make good money. They've got a consistent source of income, and they don't hate it. It's not for everybody, but for me, that other side just wasn't for me, and it was
Yeah.
so painfully obvious that it wasn't for me,
Yeah.
every day until it was no longer what I did. So.
Yeah, that's because you aren't dead inside, unfortunately.
Definitely not going to show this to the friends of mine that I still have that live
Damn, there
back at
goes
the
our
firm.
double digits.
But yeah, no, it takes a certain type. I never thought for a second that I was the type that could do it. Maybe that's something to impart upon other people, is
Hmm.
that you never really know if you're the type until you give it a try.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
No, and
my
and besides all of your real estate know-how and experience and expertise that I'm super interested to hear more about. Like, I'm very excited and interested to hear just how you made this transition and how you went from you know a very successful lawyer in Chicago to a very successful real estate mogul.
yeah, right. Mogul.
So how did you do that? Like how did you put that in your head? How did you get inspired to do that? What Take me
Well, so
through
I,
the
I
process.
was I was only being a little bit facetious when I said that we bought, a really kind of piece of garbage building. There were two buddies of mine that I went to college with, and I always had the idea that it'd be fun to try to find some of that passive income
Mm-hmm.
So we bought a
sweet,
4 unit.
sweet passive
That
income.
sweet passive income, exactly. So they both had day jobs, and so did I. But we're like, why don't we take a little bit of our extra cash and buy a 4 unit building up in Lakeview in Chicago? And we didn't have any idea what we were doing, and we're all relatively smart people, I think, as far as on relatively exactly where we can do math, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the guys has a financial engineering degree from the University of Chicago, so putting together a spreadsheet on a 4 unit building was within the scope of, I think, what he was capable of doing.
You probably learned that year 1, year 2.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully, maybe.
So we had a little bit of know-how, but all the financial know-how in the world is, a lot of these guys that are super successful in the real estate world have somebody else. They have the instincts to buy stuff rather than the know-how. They might be able to back of the envelope a deal, but when you really get into the depths of it, that's not them. But we had at least the financial side know-how. I'm not sure if we had the instincts, but we wanted to give it a shot, so we did, and we bought a building for what looked like a good price in 2013 when the market was still pretty depressed, and I think it was based on the cash flows and all that kind of stuff. But it was in really really awful shape, and we were just on the border of slumlord with that one. But we were all still working, and we really just wanted to give this a shot, and it was kind of within our price range, what we were able to afford at the time. And we had that a couple of years before I ended up transitioning out. And after about a year and a half or so, one of my buddies had heard of this crazy new idea of home sharing when he was traveling with his wife for a year.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's really fresh.
What is this thing exactly? This Airbnb. So he suggested, hey, we did this in like 7 or 8 different cities. This might work in Chicago. Why don't we give it a shot? Yeah. And frankly, I thought he was an idiot. I was like, nobody is going to pay us money to stay nightly in our just above slum level apartments in Lakeview, and people were happy to pay us money to stay in our just above slum level apartment in Lakeview. So we started to use that model on a building, and when I had a sort of an opportunity to transition out of law, I had some things going on internally at the law firm, and I was probably going to have to make a change one way or the other.
You made a pass at your boss.
I made a pass at my boss, and he was not happy with that. At least not upfront about being happy about it. Yeah. Right. But so we I basically had the opportunity to try to go with this. So in that time period, we bought a building with the sole intent of using it as a mixture of long-term and Airbnb. We knew that was a model that we had used from the previous one, and we went to some friends and family and put together a little bit of money, bought a slightly bigger building, and we put together a model.
This was the second building?
This was the second building, yeah, okay. that we had, and so we this was the first one that we went and got outside money on, though, which was a big step. It wasn't just the three of us; it was asking other people to entrust us with their tens of thousands of dollars, essentially, right. which was a scary step to take. Because it's one thing when you screw up for yourself; it's another thing when you screw up for other people. And nobody we were taking money from was gonna be on the street because of what they invested with us. But still, they probably wouldn't have been happy if they lost that money.
Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. I have so many follow-up questions to that. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah.
So, what was this like? These are your college buddies, I'm assuming.
Yeah, the two guys that I originally started with were both friends of mine that I met my first year in college. They're a couple of years ahead of me. Both of them are or were in Chicago. Now one of them has since spread out. But then we brought in another guy a little later on down the road that has a little background in real estate and really is pretty well connected within the real estate market in Chicago, and is good at raising money, which is a good skill to have in this business. So we realized we needed that skill. So we partnered up with him on the next one. So that's the core group now. The sponsors are the four of us at this point. The three of us from Iowa, and our guy who we've since met since we were in Chicago.
Mm-hmm. How did you meet him?
I got set up on a blind date with him
Really?
yeah, really. There was a partner at the law firm who was like, "Hey, you are interested in real estate, and frankly, and you're Jewish, and this guy's Jewish and interested in real estate." And I think the partner at the firm we were the two Jewish people that he'd ever met before. So he's like, "Oh, you two must have something in common. You should meet." So we did, and it turned out that we did have stuff in common, and we're friendly.
Yeah.
So we were friends long before we started working together. He kind of came in when he realized that he had some time to devote to this stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So you heard it here first, everyone. If you know someone who's like someone else in a semi-racist manner, connect them.
That's right. He never explicitly said that, but we're pretty certain that was the impetus. So, or maybe he did explicitly say it, actually, knowing the guy who set us up. So.
He was like, "Oh wait, you guys are into real estate as well as being Jewish? Like, oh, that's even right. Better."
That's 2 points of connection. How could this fail? So.
That's great.
Yeah.
So going back to the initial partnership, whose idea was this?
To start buying a building?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't even remember I bet if I looked back at some old emails, we could find some funny exchanges, just nonchalantly throwing this around. I know we were all interested in it. I don't remember who first breached the subject of actually doing it. But it was sort of a mutual understanding that we kind of all wanted to give something like this a try.
Mm-hmm.
But
you guys were like, "Oh, I hate going to an office every day," and you're like, "Me too."
That's almost certainly what it was. And actually, not too long ago, I did look back at some of our early email interactions, and we were so stupid as far as the way we analyze stuff. I wish I was somebody on the outside, one of the real estate brokers or something when we were buying that first building, so that I could have seen what we were saying and how we were approaching this, so I could have laughed at us at the time. But all's well that ends well. Some of it was timing, that the market was in the tank, so we had the ability to not make too bad of a mistake. But
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So obviously somebody had the idea, and it popped a bunch of light bulb boners in your guys your guys' head.
Right.
And you guys were like, "Oh my gosh, that could be an answer." And then what did you do from there? Like, how did you figure out how much money you needed, where you should buy, what you should buy?
That's like I said, we knew the market wasn't in a great place, so we thought there were some opportunities. We knew where we lived. We knew where people were paying good money to live in Chicago. So, essentially we learned some basics about analyzing what a cap rate is. How you analyze the value of a building. We early on, I didn't have my real estate license yet, so we just kind of looked around on sites like Redfin and enlisted a Redfin agent even to bring us through, because we knew we'd get a little kickback from the commission that way. And the person was very nice, but somebody who I think also knew very little about multifamily transactions in the city. So a lot of it was shooting in the dark. We looked at the building, and we looked at it basically just on a returns basis, but we kind of didn't really figure that, essentially there was a lot of capital improvements that were going to be needed to keep it up for the very long haul. We probably didn't really, fully appreciate that when we figured out how much we were willing to buy for. We bought it from a guy who was a developer of 3 flats in that Lakeview and Lincoln Park area. So they would build condo units essentially. Right. And he had bought this building to tear it down and build condo units. And then when the market went in the tank, he didn't want to try to build condo units there. So he wanted to get rid of it. So he didn't really care, I think, about making out big on it. He just wanted to get his money out of it, and knowing that it wasn't something that he was interested in holding. So there was a little value for us since we knew we wanted to hold it and run it for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, we probably overpaid for it a little bit at that time, but again, you get lucky with market timing, and the market didn't hurt us. So
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yeah.
kind of that long meandering answer, even close to answering the question you asked.
Yeah, it did. We wore onions on our belt. Sorry, obscure Simpsons reference to anyone who has no idea what we're talking about.
The lemon tree.
So that's awesome. So I'm guessing that you mentioned you had help from friends and family for the second building. So this first building, you were able to get enough money together, but just between you and two buddies.
Yeah, it
To
was
buy the building.
a smaller building,
Mm-hmm.
and we were all working as professionals. So I mean, as much as I gripe about having practiced law, I did it for almost 6 years, and they paid me a lot more than I was worth, and certainly more than the value that I provided for them. So I was able, I had one leg up on people, in that I was able to stash away a little bit of cash and some savings and that kind of thing. I don't want to be dismissive towards how helpful it is to have a cushion when you go out on your own. That's not nothing. And whether it's from yourself or from family, a lot of people who are willing to take that risk do it because they feel like they got a safety net there. So we were able to put away a little bit of money, it was certainly enough to take down a 4-unit building like that at the time. Actually, in that building, we did end up bringing in some investors who bought in a little bit later on, and that helped us free up some cash to go into the next one as well. So we found ways to make that work and to have the cash necessary on our own, because even though we bring in friends and family money, we also have to put up our own money. Otherwise, nobody's going to want to invest if they don't see you investing right along with them, and B, nobody's going to give you money from a bank unless you get some of your own cash as well. So we needed to figure out how to be able to do that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, skin in the game is very important.
That's exactly right. Skin in the game.
Yeah.
I didn't realize we were being buzzy and jargony on now.
Synergy. Outside the box. Okay, so I mean, did you guys just straight up buy the place cash? Was there a mortgage?
No, we went through a major national banking institution when we bought that first building.
Oh,
yeah, and that was an adventure too. I think I had my mortgage broker Google.com.
Whoa!
Find me that one. We wanted to find one thing that you'll note about the multifamily world is 2 to 4 units is a very different world than anything above 4 units.
Really?
Almost every respect. Yeah, the way that things are financed. When we bought the 2 to 4 unit one, it was like we were buying it was the same process almost as buying a single family home. They underwrite the building, but they're underwriting us more. They want, just like if you were to go purchase a condo, they want to make sure you got the ability to pay it back. When you get something bigger, they're more interested in whether the building can pay them back than you. Not that they're not interested in you at all. The better qualified you are, the better rates you'll end up with. But a lot of different people play in that 2 to 4 unit realm, and then once you get above that, it's a different space with different lenders.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, go ahead.
No, for that first building, since it was 4 units, we were able to take advantage of very traditional 30-year mortgage on
nice.
it, which was really nice from a cash flow perspective. It was a low, probably below 4% interest rate on a 30-year mortgage, which made it attractive from a cash flow perspective.
And then I don't know how much you want to answer of this, but was it like 3%, 20%?
We put on that first one, it was probably 20%. It was not less than 20%. I'm trying to think if we did 25% down in that first one. There are probably programs where you can, for a 4-unit or less building, where you could put less down. Since we don't really target stuff that size anymore, I'm a little bit out of touch on what financing looks like there. By the way, right now you've got like a halo on you from the sun outside.
Yes.
You look like Jesus.
No, I am. I'm bald Jesus.
I love everything about it. Sorry.
This is all for you.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm not completely sure. I wouldn't want to try to speak intelligently on that, on what you'd have to put down these days to be able to get a 2 to 4 unit building. But
for sure.
I'm guessing there are programs out there that would probably let you get in at less than 20%, especially if it's owner occupied. That's a big caveat.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If you want to go live in one of the units and rent the others, people are much more interested in giving you good terms. I don't know if they feel like you're more invested in it, or since it's your primary home and not an investment property per se. It's just a different underwriting process.
Because they don't want you to shit where you eat.
Right.
Except you will be. You'll likely be shitting there as well. So,
I would hope so.
I don't understand the metaphor.
That's all right. I liked it.
I like stories. That's awesome. So what made you interested in the 2 to 4 family homes? Like what was it about that setup?
I think what was interesting about that setup at the time was it was what we could afford.
Always interesting.
Also, what we thought we could handle. We had never managed a building before. And just learning how to run a building, be a landlord, frankly, was new. We had to learn it on the fly, and we all had full-time jobs, so we didn't really want to take on something that was going to be another full-time job while we were still doing our day jobs. And so that it really just fit what we needed at the time to try to get our, essentially try to make an entry into the area, into the space. And I think the idea was always that we'd get this one and then hopefully continue to grow our portfolio out. Yeah. But that was kind of the foot in the door type of buy.
Nice. Yeah, sort of prove viability almost. Like, hey, we didn't burn this one down.
Right. Maybe. Exactly. Not intentionally.
Yeah. I mean, there was an electrical fire, but it was well insured.
So for that one, and actually we don't own that one anymore. That's the only building that we've exited out of.
Oh, really? The original?
The original we got rid of.
Nice. I still have the first client we ever got that pays us $200 a month.
That's fantastic.
He's been with us since 2012.
Wow.
I've talked to him 4 times in my entire life, and he just, like clockwork,
keeps paying you.
Pays us $200.
Are you doing anything for him?
Yeah, we post to his Facebook and Twitter every day.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Sounds like money well spent for him. Money well earned for you.
Yeah, either I don't know. We're getting ripped off. He's getting ripped off. No, it's a complete
symbiotic relationship.
It just works.
That's right.
That's great. What else? So what did you learn about sort of how to be a landlord? Like, did you guys handle everything? Did you hire a company to fix stuff?
We've never hired a management company because one thing that makes it, I think, what we do well and how we do well by our investors is by running things lean. We don't stack fees on top of fees. We don't have, when you have a management company, you're paying them 5% or whatever it is right off the top, and I don't even know what that might be to answer the phone, but then by the time they get somebody out and are paying a professional and probably charging for the time to bring the professional, all of a sudden it makes it tough when the margins are relatively thin to get the returns back to our investors that we want. So we're able to self-manage where we can, we do some of our own maintenance work. Most of it, especially at some level of complexity, we outsource to the pros. But just being able to manage and being on top of it ourselves, I think, has been a huge benefit for our portfolio and for our investors.
Mm-hmm.
And it also has the advantage of keeping that money. Not in worse. It's a separate management company, but with me, what it allowed was for me to be able to take that step away a little faster, because it's not totally passive. The building income was passive, but the management income was actually active income.
Mm-hmm.
It gave me another source, and gave us another source of revenue to basically make the transition feasible, which was really, really crucial, and continues to be crucial, because it's a good source of revenue if you're not paying it to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll add that one thing that we learned pretty early about the management business is, if you go online and you Yelp management companies,
Mm-hmm.
if they have like 2.5 stars, that's an all-star
top of the
company,
top,
right? And it's top of the heap, right? Like 2.5 stars from a management company is just out of this world. So
Mm-hmm.
I think what we've seen is that a lot of those big management companies just don't care, or they just have so much on their plate that it's hard for them to care about the daily going-ons of hundreds or thousands of units.
Right.
We kind of have made it our business to make it a customer service business as well. We realize that when our tenants are happy, it's a much easier life for us. So
Mm-hmm.
Even if there's something that we're maybe not contractually obligated to do, or maybe we don't need to get back, after hours or late at night or right away when somebody sends something out, we do anyway, because it gives our tenants a bit of peace of mind, and it makes it easier for us, because they realize that we're not there to screw them. We're in this too. And if they're happy, we're definitely happier.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing worse than being at odds with a tenant, because as much as they think that the landlord can really stick it to them, especially in the city of Chicago, I feel like the tenant has the ability to hurt the landlord every bit as much as the other way around. So we don't want to end up in those situations where we're trying to use the law to fight each other, because then everybody's going to lose, or we're going to lose.
Yeah, an eviction takes many, many moons, right?
Yeah, and even if it's not eviction, even if it's just any other aspect of the landlord tenant ordinance in Chicago that you start fighting over. If they want to withhold money because they're saying you're not fixing things properly, right? You might be able to get that back someday, but it's going to take a lot of money and a lot of time to get that money back. So you're better off just trying to figure out how to make everybody happy and keep everybody happy. Not always going to work. Sometimes people are jerks, or you're just not able to come to a consensus one way or the other. But we've done a pretty good job, knock on wood, of figuring out how to keep everybody happy.
The first thing that popped into my head about that is, like, I've gotten pretty good at choosing Craigslist roommates.
Yeah.
Which is amazing, because I consistently pick like terrible life partners.
Right.
But I think I'm pretty good at picking Craigslist roommates.
Yeah. And that should be much more difficult than
it really should,
partner.
But night and day. I'm very, very bad at picking the life partners. But I would imagine you can avoid 90 to 95% of potential issues with tenants by just kind of vetting them correctly. Like,
definitely.
Have you guys developed some sort of skill or process for doing that?
I don't know if it's a special skill, other than that, again, we're not outsourcing that job either. It's not somebody else who's just looking to make a payday. It's us. And we realize that, if whoever we're bringing in, like you said, like once they're in for until that lease is up. So you're not getting rid of them without a fight. So rather than just trying to cash in on renting the place out, we're trying to find the right people to live there. We've had one or two scenarios where we inherited a bad tenant here or there when we bought the building, or a difficult tenant, I would say. That's something you can't really avoid. You don't get to meet all your tenants before you buy the building. But when we've had the opportunity to actually put our own in, we've had some really great long-term tenants who have renewed for year after year.
Nice.
And who I'd keep for as long as they want to stay there, essentially. That's always nice to find.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you guys, just so I understand, you guys manage the building, you fix anything, you find the tenants, you deal with any issues that come up with the tenants.
Yeah.
So you're not paying that, first month's free rent to some sort of company that finds tenants, right?
Right. That's exactly right.
Okay. So why aren't you guys working with companies like that? And why do buildings work with companies like that?
So the there was a visionary man named Al Gore who
Mm-hmm. The internet.
invented the internet, right? Really a man of vision and brilliance and guts. And since the advent of the internet, that whole industry, like the apartment finders industry,
Mm-hmm.
it should have gone away the day that happened, right? The day that
Wow.
ads and Zillow and all those things came into existence, because all they were was gatekeepers, right,
Yeah.
of the information. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's the same thing with real estate agents. Frankly, I have my real estate license, so I don't want to bash the real estate, the National
Oh, they're
Association of
coming after
Realtors.
you.
That's right. But it's something that's just itching to be disrupted properly, and hopefully it will be to lower the transaction costs of exchanging real estate at some point here. But it was really easy to disrupt the whole apartment finders industry, just because it's just not necessary. Everybody, all you need is the ability to Google or to type in hotpads.com, and you've got most of the inventory that's out there.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you're able to show and you're able to, figure out how to list, how to take pictures, right? How to take reasonable pictures and put in a description of your apartment. Our stuff tends to be in good locations. We try to buy things where the location and the apartments themselves sell themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we try to price them right, and we try to get the market right. And it's pretty amazing how this whole free market thing works, because when we're off on a rent, when we go to market with it, we'll know, like within a week, I'll be like, man, I've gotten like 2 views of my apartment, or like 1 email. That means that I'm way off. If it's summertime and I'm not getting feedback, I'm not getting requests to see the place, I can immediately know that I need to drop my price down. And once you get to that right price, that sweet spot price, you're going to get views, you're going to get emails, and it should rent pretty quickly, especially in this market. So it's not rocket science, I guess, is the bottom line. As long as you have the information, you're smart enough to be able to figure out how to put together a description and an ad, it should be attainable for everybody who has the time and the real estate. So.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So how do you guys choose the price and location?
Well, so the locations, we've always tried to find things that still have just a little bit of meat left on the bone, but that are pretty far along. So we're not prospecting out, waiting for the neighborhood to change. We like, I mean, you're down in Pilsen, right?
I am.
As we speak.
Yep. Currently.
123 Fake Street.
Whoa! Not live on the air, bro.
Edit that out.
We'll edit that out.
But I obviously, you and I, we bought in Pilsen in 2018, right? We certainly weren't the first people to discover that Pilsen was an attractive place to own real estate, and I don't think you're the first person to realize it was a great place to live. But you're also not all the way at the end of that line either. There's going to be a lot of people after you who are realizing how cool Pilsen is, right? You're still on the earlier side, but it's come a long way. So that's what we try. We like to see places like that. When we bought in the Ukrainian Village, 5 or 6 years ago, we weren't blazing a trail there, but we were still early enough, I think, to get enough of a deal on real estate for it to make money for us, right? Mm-hmm. If we were to go buy something right in the heart of Lincoln Park, we're going to buy it at a cap rate that's not really going to provide. People do it; they park their money there. It's like a bond investment, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're almost always going to have people rent in there, but you're not going to make a whole lot of money off of it, certainly in the short term. So we try to hit those singles and doubles, we call it. We're not hitting home runs, just singles and doubles in up and coming, but semi-established.
Moneyball.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how we choose our locations. I think we've done a pretty good job of that so far. Logan Square, Ukrainian Village, Pilsen, those types of areas that are solid, but just not all the way core yet. And when we determine how much we're going to price our rentals at, we look at the market, right? We look at what other stuff in the area. I'll do a quick market analysis and see what's going on around there. What other stuff that looks like ours is on the market for. And like I said, sometimes I'll miss it. I won't realize that our place is maybe a little smaller than other places, or I won't properly factor in that, how much people will pay for in-unit, washer and dryers and things like that.
A lot.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's crazy. That and dishwashers. I feel like I can just put a dishwasher and a washer and dryer in the middle of an empty unit. And
I'll live there.
And yeah, right.
I'll pay top dollar. Where is this place? Can we see it today?
Sold. So yeah, we it's some of it is more art than science. But we've done a good job of having virtually no vacancy in any of our units ever. We've had like a month and a half of vacancy combined in all of our units across the last 5 years or so, because
wow.
Yeah, it's fantastic because the market's in a good spot and we price stuff right. And,
And do you price things? You just kind of like look at the neighboring areas and see what they're going for, or kind of?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'll look on Hotpads and Zillow and Trulia and those types of places and say what is a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom that is updated going for within a mile of this place right now, and I'll do. There's more. It's a very rudimentary comparative market analysis essentially, but it's enough, I think, to figure out what things are worth. I would love for us to have some better. That's one thing I'd like to do better going forward is to have better metrics, have better data, so we can really kind of home in on some of that information better. But like I said, more on the art than science side. It's not rocket science. It's the kind of thing that you can get pretty close to without having all the data in the world to back it up.
Awesome. So I want to take a step back to, that first building investment, because I feel like that's what I'm sort of most interested in right now, and I feel like that's what a lot of people listening to this will be most interested in.
Okay, a lot of person listening to this.
Yeah, a lot of person. So what's sort of the process? You buy the building. You get the money together, whether it's your money, your and your partner's money. You find the building, you mortgage it out, then you fill it with tenants, and then you're obviously then making more money than your payments to the bank.
That's the big thing.
In theory.
Yeah.
Right?
The big thing is making sure that you're making more money than it costs to have the building.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So how much, if you feel comfortable answering this, how much money do you can you expect to make on that first building?
So that's a really hard question to answer. Not that I don't want to say an answer. I have no problem.
You're stonewalling.
Yeah. It's more of a question of what you're buying. Have you bought? We've bought mostly stabilized properties. You say do you buy and then fill it? We actually don't so far. For the most part, we've bought stuff that's already stabilized, has tenants. We know it's operating the way that we want it to be operating. It makes it easier for us to get debt and all that kind of stuff. It makes it easier for the bank to underwrite it. On a smaller building, like I said, where they might underwrite you more than the building, you might not need as hard and fast numbers as you need to show a lender when you're buying a bigger building. Unless, of course, you're buying it to rehab it, and that's a whole nother animal altogether. But if you're just looking to buy something to essentially have a very passive cash flow where you're just managing a small building yourself and trying to figure out how to make a little bit of money on that. That's all. It's all a function of your cap rate, what you buy it at. That's what's going to help you determine. And the cap rate, without getting too super technical, is the net income of the building divided by your purchase price. So your net income is if you're all your rents minus the costs that it takes to keep the building up and running, right? So your taxes, your maintenance fees, your leasing fees, all that kind of stuff. And what you probably want to see is that number in the kind of like your expenses being about 25 to 30% of your revenues when you're buying it. And then how much cash flow you actually have is gonna depend on how much debt you have on the building as well, right? So if you take a mortgage out and they're willing to give you 80%, your cash flow is going to be lower than if you had no debt on it, because you have to pay off the debt service too.
Right.
So it's tough. It's really tough to give an exact number just because there's so many moving parts in it. But really, I'd say that if you're able to buy in the cap rate of that 6.5 to ish range, your net income is 6.5% of the purchase price. Then you're probably going to be able to make some positive cash flow on your building, that you're buying. It's essentially what I'd say is if it's something that somebody's interested in doing, right? If Chris Broadhead wants to go buy a building, first of all, he can come and talk to me, and we can go over the finances of it together outside. But you should do your research, right? Make sure you understand what that means. Like, understand all the expenses that go into it. I remember when I was early on, I'd be like, oh man, the cap rate on this building is like 10 or 11%, or it's a cap rate of 10 or 11, and I'd tell people that who are in the industry, they're like, wow, that really surprises me that you can buy at a 10 or 11 cap. I thought that Chicago would have been more, a more competitive market than that. And I realized that they weren't the ones that were wrong. I just didn't realize all the different expenses that went into running a building. There's a lot more money that comes out to keep a building going than you expect when you've never done it before. So as much research as you can possibly do on how to properly value the building, I think is important when you're going into it. Does that make sense? I know we got a little technical there, and it's hard.
No, that was great. So you're mentioning cap rates. I don't think I quite grasp what that means.
Sure, and I know it's hard to. First of all, I'm terrible at explaining concepts, but second of all, it's hard to grasp the concept without reading it a lot of times too. And kind of seeing it.
Maybe that's something that is better learned on their own time. But
I can give it one more shot here with some actual numbers, right? Let's say you buy a building, and we'll try to keep things really round. Let's say you have $1 million building, right? And you want to buy it at a 6.5 cap. That means that the net income after you've paid all of your fees on that building in the year has to be $65,000. So if your rents are $100,000, if you're getting $100,000 in rent on $1 million purchase, you have to then subtract from your $100,000 that you made. Let's say your taxes are $15,000 on the building, right? Probably more than that because you're in Chicago and they, bend you over as much as they can. But that's $15,000. And let's say your leasing fees are another few $1,000s. Your management fees are a few $1,000s. You need to get down, and you want to buy at a 6.5 cap rate. You need to be able to end up at that $65,000 number. So in net income, net of your expenses. So that's kind of how you look at it when you're coming in. If that was the bar that you had set for what you wanted, what you wanted to buy was at a 6.5 cap, you'd need to figure out what the revenue is, and then look at your expenses the best you can, because you'll get some of those expenses from a seller, but the seller might, they might not be lying to you, but their expenses might be different than your expenses, or they might feel less need to fix some things that you feel the need to fix, because you want to keep your building in good shape and all those types of things. Yeah. They might use their own management company, whereas, you're using somebody else. So there's all sorts of different ways to get to that number. You can't just go with what the seller hands you necessarily. Trash collection, if you have to pay for that, there's all common electricity, the landlord always pays water, right? So that's another expense. So you have to look into it. You have to kind of get an idea. It's all about going in with an informed, being informed on the process. And the more informed you can get by reading and studying up on it before you go is the better.
Awesome. No, so knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
Good to know. Okay. So, if you were starting over today, in this year 2019, and you had Siri thinks I'm talking to her. Go away, Siri. Um, and if you didn't have any partners and you had a nice chunk of change, what do you think you would do? Because I feel like that's where most people listening, I guess, to take a step back, my goal with this is to convince more people that they don't have to continue
Doing what they're doing.
And
Yeah.
there are other options, and maybe this is the option for them.
Yeah.
So, what would, you've been doing this for 6 years. What would you do if you were starting today, I guess?
These aren't just yes or no or analysis. These are thought provoking questions.
Do you like anyone from class more than a friend? Yes or no?
Miss Lippy. No, it's what would I do if I didn't have any partners and I was in this exact position today, just had a chunk of change. I think the bottom line is I would try to learn as much about the process, about what the costs are, what the time commitments are, and things like that. I still think the market is. There's not a lot of good deals out there right now. It's a tough time to be just trying to break. It's a tough time for us as stabilized buyers to try to find stuff that makes sense. There's a lot of unknowns in the national economy. There's unknowns in Chicago right now as far as what taxes are going to do. So it's a tough time to be breaking into this particular field, but that's not to say that there's nothing out there. You just have to kind of be diligent about it, right? Mm-hmm. Try to find every source of information that you can about people that are selling, right? There's the MLS, right? Which is what you can find on Redfin and all that kind of stuff. Or if you hire a real estate agent, you can go on the MLS. But there's also lots of groups out there that do just this stuff, that are just selling this stuff and aren't necessarily marketing their stuff in the traditional way. So getting your eyes on as many deals as possible, while you're also trying to figure out as much as possible about how this works and whether it's the kind of thing that you want to do. A lot of people are like, I'm so jealous of what you do because it's just totally passive. Well, it's not totally passive, right? There's a lot of headaches when it comes to it. You've got to make sure that if you are going to leave, that you've got the ability to take an annoying call, right? Or like, hey, it's 50 below and our water's not on anymore.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, it's because your pipes froze and there's virtually nothing I can do to unfreeze your pipes until it's no longer 50 below, right? and now you're without water for 3 days, right? So those things come up, they happen, So going into it with eyes open, I guess, is what I would say. It's really cool to not have to be at somebody else's beck and call. But even when you're your own boss, you're still at somebody else's beck and call sometimes, right? When it's your tenant who needs basic things to continue to function and live. So just I wouldn't direct anybody away from getting into the game now. I think that there are still good long-term hold plays to be had. It's just do your research. Do as much research as you can and figure out why it's the right play for you right now.
Awesome. That was a great answer. That there's always stuff you don't consider, like that your tenants need water and
I didn't even
electricity.
Think that I would have to.
Yeah.
It's like, I gave you a box to live in. Live in the box, right? Like, figure out.
It's called a bucket.
It's called a bucket.
Maybe
That's right.
Look it up.
Running water. Where do you think we are?
What do you think? We're just made of money? Like, come on. That's awesome. So, at what point in the process, you're invested with partners in a building, you're taking on other investors for your second building, you're just hating every second and every face you see in that corporate gig. When did you feel like, all right, cool, I can step off into full on me being my own man?
I'll be honest. Like it was, in addition to being lucky on the side of things where I had some cash stored away. I also had a significant other who was supportive of it and who had some income as well. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, is get into a relationship with somebody who makes money.
A sugar mama.
Sugar mama. That's right. No, so that it really did help to know that that I wasn't like a total solitary, source of income. I don't want to gloss over that part too much, because that was important for me personally, and how I was able to make that step. But really, it was looking at my cash flows and seeing like what we were making from the building, what I was making from the management side of things. And just deciding that I was able to cover my expenses. I didn't need to be replacing my income right away. I think that's the biggest thing, is being able to get over that mental hurdle that if you're in a corporate world, you're probably not going to replace your income on day one. You're probably not going to replace your income in year one, year two, even, right? I mean, so like, don't look at it like if what you're doing really isn't making you happy, then put aside out of your mind, to the extent you can, the money you're making there, because it's largely irrelevant if that's not what you want to be doing, right? So that was the biggest thing, was me kind of getting over that mental hurdle of, all right, I can cover my cash flows, I can cover my expenses. I'm not gonna be to where I was as a corporate lawyer, for a little bit, most likely. Maybe you will, maybe you've got a unicorn in your WeWork, right? And your IPO kills it. Awkward. But
too soon.
Yeah. No, but maybe you do. Maybe your idea is so hot, and you've got all sorts of venture funding, and you make a ton of money. But the sooner you can put out of your head how much money you are or were making in the past, and just figure out what you actually need to sustain yourself, the better you are. And a lot of that is just mental, because most of us don't realize, you were like, oh, we're all scrounging for money, but I mean, like, it's all relative, right? Figure out what you can, maybe what you can cut out, or what you don't want, what's important to you. And that was huge for me. It was just being able to get over that hurdle.
Yeah, no, that's amazing you say that. I don't think that from that perspective ever like occurred to me. Like, when I was working my corporate gig for NASA, perhaps you've heard of them. I spent all my money because like the job was deeply unsatisfying. So
Right.
I had like, really fancy apartment, and I would drink the fanciest of drinks at the bar that I went to 6 or 7 nights a week. And it was like, if I'm expecting to like cover this nut, like right out the gate, like that's just not going to happen.
You're not going to.
But the thing is, the reason I was spending that much money was to offset like the deeply unsettling feelings of dissatisfaction I was having. I'm
sure exploring the cosmos and helping to figure out, push the human race forward was horribly unsatisfying, right?
Well, yes. If I did any of that, I'm sure that would have been great, but I did the numbers.
You were no corporate bankruptcy lawyer, obviously. It's really what keeps the human race forward. So
that's true. I think that's a super important perspective to keep in mind. Like perhaps, you have developed some unconscious habit where you are, you're buying clothes, you're buying fancy drinks, fancy dinners, fancy trips to just sort of offset these feelings of dissatisfaction. It's like, well, when you get rid of the source of dissatisfaction, perhaps you can save that money to slowly grow out your new career.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. That's awesome. So after that, were you doing both things for like 6 months, a year, multiple years?
I guess it was, probably a little over a year, about a year and a few months, I think, if I do the math right there, of when we bought our first building sometime in 2013. And then I was officially out of the corporate world in the beginning of 2015, middle of 2015. So year and a half in there of doing it together.
And you pulled a half-baked quitting the hamburger stand?
I absolutely did. It was like such a huge scene.
You're cool, I'm out.
That's right. But that was the best part.
Yeah, I mean that's when you knew it was all worth it.
That's right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, and at what point did you sort of match your previous salary? How much do you make pre-tax?
If I'm being totally frank, I still haven't matched what I was, especially
Mm-hmm.
given like the accelerations where if I was still practicing in the same practice,
Right.
right now,
Right.
making additional money throughout the years, I
Mm-hmm.
probably still haven't matched that. But I also, it's not an apples to apples comparison either,
For
because,
sure.
I make money on transactions in addition to like the daily cash flow that of managing and just investing in the property. So when
Mm-hmm.
we do a transaction, I'll make a little bit more money than I would if we didn't do a transaction at that time. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just a less stable, it's a less defined sort of income now. But I continue to see the potential of like at the law firm, it was lockstep, right? I was going to make this and this, this,
Mm-hmm.
this, and now it's you know wholly dependent on my own ability to essentially do more business. And that's the other side of
Yeah.
this whole thing, right? Is do I want to continue to do more? But do I really want to be a real estate mogul where
Mm-hmm.
I start, like, at some point it gets to the point where you're running a business, right? Where you may need to bring in additional hands on deck and things like that. Um, and I have to kind of make that decision on my own of do I like where I've gotten? Have I kind of towed a line where I'm making the money that I need to be making to be happy in life? Or is growth for the sake of growth, like to the point where, now all of a sudden I'm running and responsible for other people's, you know,
Mm-hmm.
employment and things like that,
Yeah.
right? Is
Yeah.
that a better place to be too? And I think a lot of people lose track of that when they go off on
Right.
their own, is that they
Right.
think growth, 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 growth. And that may be true for some people. Other people should just realize they're going to hit where they want and maintain. So
Mm-hmm.
that's something that I haven't fully wrapped my own head around in my
Yeah.
process, as to whether I want to, find that happy medium, or just continue to try to grow, to establish a real business.
Yeah.
So,
No, the struggle is real.
yeah,
I
yeah,
I I recently came to my, I don't know, 100,000th conclusion to that answer. That's,
yeah,
one way or the other.
right, exactly right. So with what day is it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Um,
and and the one thing I'm probably not great at is sitting down and putting goals on a piece of paper. I think that's
mhm.
actually probably a really useful exercise. And we talk about it amongst the partners all the time, and then don't do it because
No accountability.
hey, we need to get together. Let's go have a scotch and talk about our goals. And then
Yeah.
hey, let's just have another scotch.
What
So
what were we doing here? Oh yeah, scotch.
scotch. That was the point of this. So from that perspective, I'm sure that there's things that we could be doing better, and hopefully we kind of do a better job, and maybe in 2020 will be a year of goal setting for us. So.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean that is a tough question because you're like, hey Pierce, you're like
Did you hear that?
you're like you're comfortable, you're satisfied, you're able to do the things you want to do. You don't hate doing what you do. Like
Right,
why mess with that?
right,
Obviously you want to have continuous growth
right.
in case, building collapses or burns down. or,
Oh,
you
we've
know.
got insurance for that.
But,
um,
yeah, I think that's an important consideration as well. Like
yeah,
when do you sort of say like, "No, I'm good, I want to focus on something else."
right. Because at some point you might accidentally find yourself back into into a corporate job, even
Yeah.
if it's a corporation of your own making, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So you got to be a little careful about that. Make sure you kind of
Yeah.
don't steer yourself back into a place where you're not happy. But there's Pierce again. He's getting fed.
Yeah. We'll have to get his handsome ass on the show next time.
Anytime if you can pay his
Oh, shoot.
honorarium,
That's right. I don't know if we can
whatever that
afford
is,
him anymore.
his speaker fee,
Yeah. 100K.
100K.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, That's awesome, man. I could ask you questions until the cows
until the cows come home.
come home.
Yeah.
But I do want to respect your time.
Cool.
Let me see if there's one more question that maybe I wrote before we started talking. So I guess, yeah, my last two questions probably have to do with Airbnb
Sure.
and then, rent versus sell.
Okay.
So, why do you guys rent instead of sell? And then why do you Airbnb instead of rent?
So the Airbnb side of things is purely an economic answer, right? Like we saw that using one or two units in our buildings allowed us to make within the city of Chicago eventually got their stuff together and put an ordinance together that kind of capped how much we could do in any building. So we'll kind of look at what we can do when we're deciding if we're gonna Airbnb. But over the course of a year, we found that all expenses in, we can make about 40 to 50% more for a unit when it's Airbnb.
Wow.
Than if it was just a traditional long-term rent. And I say that one thing we do, I don't want to give away too many of our trade secrets here though, but no, when we Airbnb,
No, please.
yeah, right. Our in Chicago, as it turns out, people don't love coming here in the wintertime. It's not that attractive of a destination. Yeah, I was surprised to hear that.
Why I moved here.
Right, exactly. When I have my ski goggles on to walk the dog, I don't know what our problem is. But so there's less demand. So what we try to do during the middle of the winter is put in like a 2 or 3 month kind of medium term renter. So when we do that and we use that formula, we found we can get a 40 to 50% kick on any given unit, which is nice because it lets us pay a little bit extra out to our investors and have a little bit extra in our own pockets at the end of the day. So that's why we use Airbnb. As far as whether we're going to hold and rent or sell a place, we really haven't come to the point in the life cycle of any of our buildings where we've had to decide if we're going to refinance and hold or if we're going to sell. We're about to come there next year. So if you want to do this again in about 6 months, I can tell you what our analysis looked like. But ultimately, It really will just be what is the market willing to give? What are interest rates looking like right now? What is the appetite of the investors who are currently in the building to stick around? And be there, for a longer period of time. So it'll be all those considerations. And when you look at the totality of it, we'll decide if it's the right place to have our money right now. And if it's not, and we think that there's another opportunity to take the cash out and go to find a different building, then we'll do that. But yeah, so other than that very first building that we bought, which wasn't exactly a keep versus sell analysis, we had done some rehabbing to that building because it was either that or let a stiff breeze knock it over. And once we did that, the best way to get our money out, our money back from the rehab was to sell. That's just what the financial analysis bore out for us.
Oh, I see.
But for the stuff that's stabilized, as to whether we're going to keep holding it down the line, it's just going to be whether at the time the financial analysis bears out that it's better for us to hold than to sell it and move on to something else.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I totally lied because I have one more question.
All right, what is it?
Can you tell me about the evolution of going from 2 to 4 bedroom family homes to, it sounds like you guys are dealing with bigger buildings now?
Yeah.
I guess that's just a strict investment issue. It's just
one thing we realized is when from a time perspective, it's a lot easier to manage things that are one of the problems with the neighborhood stuff that we buy and the smaller stuff is that everything is not right next to each other, right? So there's just economies of scale that come into play when you can manage something that's all in one place. When it's a little bit bigger, it makes it more attractive for us. It also makes the returns more attractive for us because while we're still putting in money, we're putting in maybe a smaller percentage of the building. So it makes it more attractive to the sponsors, but it also makes it more difficult because you're raising more money, right? And you're dealing with larger sums and and all that. Just, you're dealing with more people to manage and more units to manage, and higher expenses when if you have to change, to replace a roof on a 15 unit building, it's going to be a lot more expensive and a much bigger job than if you did it on a 4 unit building. So we look at those things and weigh them against each other, but ultimately the economies of scale kind of make it nice to be able to get the bigger stuff when we can. So, yeah.
Awesome. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
It was my pleasure.
Yeah, dude, this was awesome. You blew my mind, as I had a feeling you might. Cool. Anything you want to share, plug, or anything that?
No, I don't. Rent from us. We've got nice. Actually, don't have anything available right now.
I'm sorry, listeners. You are shit out of luck.
Out of luck. You can't rent from a full 2.7 Yelp star reviewed management company.
Oh my God, you guys are number one in Chicago.
number one in Chicago. Appreciate you having me on. Hopefully, it wasn't just horribly like needles in the eyeball boring for anybody who listens to it. But